Welcome to E&E Weekly. Our top stories today. World's biggest oil importer, China, running out of storage space. Federal government explains reasons for deregulation. The Department of Petroleum Resources says more than 600 companies have bid for Nigeria's marginal oil fields. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, Southwest, has suspended its planned industrial action. And on power, House of Representatives says generating companies and distribution companies have disappointed the citizenry. We'll be back after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to E&E Weekly. This is the Thursday edition of the program. The world's biggest oil importer is running out of storage. It's been reported that when international crude oil markets crashed earlier this year, global oil storage was at a premium. China, on the other hand, busied itself stocking up on cheap oil to the extent that Beijing played a key role in the global oil market's recovery by helping to buy off a significant portion of the world's severe oil glut. International news has been reporting for weeks on China's jam-packed waterways filling with crude tankers. China's floating storage is taking over 7 days or longer to discharge and has nearly quadrupled since the end of May. Let's take a look at today's OPEC oil pricing. That was a chart showing today's oil pricing for OPEC member countries. The Ministry of Petroleum Resources has cleared the misconception around the issues of petroleum products deregulation. The ministry explained that after a thorough examination of the economics of subsidizing premium motor spirit for domestic consumption, the federal government concluded that it was unrealistic to continue with the burden of subsidizing PMS to the tune of trillions of naira every year. A statement signed by the Minister of State, Chief Timipre Silva, said the subsidy was benefiting in large part the richer rather than the poor and ordinary Nigerians. The statement explained that deregulation means the government will no longer continue to be the main supplier of petroleum products, but will encourage private sector to take over the role as suppliers. What this means is that market forces will henceforth determine the pump price, which it says is in line with global best practices. The ministry stated that government would continue to play its traditional role of regulation to ensure that commodity is not priced arbitrarily by private sector suppliers. This means government acts as a regulatory agency, just like the role played by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the banking sector, ensuring that commercial banks do not charge arbitrary interest rates. It also said premium products are refined from crude oil. Therefore, the price of crude for the refining process will affect the price of the refined product. According to the ministry, when crude oil prices were down, government, through its regulatory functions, ensured that Nigerians enjoy the benefits of lower crude oil prices by ensuring that PMS also known as petrol, was lowered. The ministry said when petrol pump price was reduced, it was also indicated that increase in crude oil prices would also reflect at the pump price to the increase. According to the ministry, government's action is in the overall interest of Nigerians. It says one of the reasons they have been unable to attract the level of investment desired into the refining sector has been the burden of fuel subsidy. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Timothy Silva, said there is need to free up investment space so that the sort of investments being made in the banking, aviation, and other sectors can happen in the midstream and downstream oil sector. He said government never promised to reduce pump price and keep it permanently low. The minister explained in addition to attracting investments and creating job opportunities, the policy's direction will free up trillions of naira to develop infrastructure. He said government is very mindful of the likely impact higher PMS prices would have on Nigerians, and to elevate the sector, the government is working hard to roll out the auto gas scheme, which will provide Nigerians with alternative sources of fuel at a lower cost. Chief Silva mentioned that the sector will no longer avoid the inevitable and expect the impossible to continue. More than 600 companies have bid for Nigeria's 57 marginal oil fields. This is according to the Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, stating that more than 600 firms have applied to be pre-qualified for the ongoing bid rounds of 57 marginal oil fields in the country. Engineer Walu Serki, the director of DPR, said the exercise was important as Nigeria last conducted marginal field bid rounds in 2003. He also noted that the ongoing exercise had attracted widespread interest because of the transparent and credible procedures put in place by the agency. He said after the extension of the deadline to June 21st, there was a 30% increase in the participation of new bidders. The DPR director said from the amount of participators, this can be described as a success. He said according to schedule, the projectivity at its pre-qualification stage for bidders to apply. However, analysts say due to the crash in oil prices brought about by the lockdown, lacking demand due to lockdown restrictions introduced to curb the coronavirus, major oil companies were not able to participate. This is due to the fact that most oil companies had to slash its budget for the year to be able to cope with the current situation of loss. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, more stories from the oil sector. Stay with us. Welcome back to E&E Weekly, Thursday's edition. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, Southwest, has suspended its planned industrial action. The association's planned strike was over issues pertaining the increment of fuel price, which it described as incessant price increments, as well as inconsistency in pricing regulations without consultations with stakeholders by the Petroleum Product Price Regulatory Agency, PPPRA. IPMAN Zonal Chairman Alhaji Dele Tajuddin disclosed that the suspension of the planned strike followed the intervention of the Director of Department of State Security Service, DSS, Mr. David Tuska, who promised to intervene and get their grievances addressed positively. Alhaji Tajuddin explained that the DSS Director, Mr. Tuska, had earlier invited the IPMAN Zonal Executive Committee in Southwest for a meeting. He said in the course of the meeting, the entire Executive Committee agreed with him to put the strike on hold till after the Salah celebrations. Alhaji Tajuddin said the DSS boss had pleaded with IPMAN zonal executives to hold on the planned strike in the interest of the nation as a way of honoring him and his office. He also disclosed that several issues were brought before Mr. Tuska in which he agreed to present to the federal government a management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC. He said this will see to the seamless distribution of petroleum products across the southwestern geopolitical zone. He listed some of the demands to include IPMAN members must be included in the board of PPPRA and that of the Petroleum Equalization Fund, PEF. According to him, this will enable the association to be carried along in decision-making as one of the critical stakeholders in the petroleum distribution and dispensing sector. Another demand is that NNPC, through the PPPRA, must immediately stop preferential treatment being accorded to major marketers in the distribution chain of the petroleum products. He claims that NNPC grants credit facilities to some dealers, while members of the association also claims to pay before loading products and documents are delayed in processing. The association also requested for the rehabilitation of the NNPC depot at Ore, which they claim has been moribund for over 20 years. They called for the availability of other products such as AGO and DPK. Alhaji Tajuddin said members of IPMAN were being harassed by security agencies and pleaded with Mr. Tuska to intervene, in which the DSS boss assured him of quick intervention. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, Southwest leader, said the association is dissatisfied with the situation of infrastructural facilities at all NNPC depot, particularly at the Mosimi depot in Ogun State, which he said was responsible for making trucks involved in several accidents recorded in the area. He called on the corporation to commence an immediate rehabilitation on the Shagamu-Mosimi-Ikorodu road to avert further disgruntlement. And an explosion at the Gbetiokun OML-40 Benin River valve have claimed 7 lives. The unfortunate incident was announced by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, on behalf of the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, NPDC. According to the report, the explosion occurred during the installation of a ladder by the NPDC staff for discharge of products. The corporation said a detailed investigation of the cause of the explosion has commenced, while the Department of Petroleum Resources has been duly notified and Form 41 was being prepared for the industry regulator as required in circumstances of this nature. The corporation disclosed that the bodies of casualties have been deposited in a morgue in Sapele, while families of the personnel involved are being contacted by their employers. The Group Managing Director of NNPC, Malamele Kerry, commiserated with the families of the bereaved, praying that God grants them the fortitude to bear the irreparable loss of their loved ones. Meanwhile, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has also announced that the PPPRA would monthly do a review of petroleum products price so as to cool off the disgruntlement with the increment in price. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, the power sector. Welcome back to E&E Weekly, Thursday's edition. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, says the power sector problems had led to poor supply of electricity over the years and dampened the hope of Nigerians for industrialization and overall development. He said despite the huge investment in the power sector, little progress has been made. Mr. Gbajabiamila said it's becoming increasingly worrisome that successive governments have not been able to fix the issue of power in the country. He was represented by Honorable Wasi. Let's take a look at this report.
I want to say with that fair quotation, over 1.2 trillion has so far been invested. And there is no commensurate result. This is a very important hearing that could lead us to a very good path, and I want to believe that their work, I have no doubt in the capability and the people, composition of people who are assigned to this very important assignment.
The House also declared that power generating companies, GENCOs, and distribution companies, known as DISCOs, have disappointed the citizenry. The declaration came at the inaugurative investigative hearing by the Ad Hoc Committee on Power Sector Reform held at the National Assembly in Abuja. The chairman of the Ad Hoc Committee and majority leader of the House, Al-Hassan Ado Dogowa, said the committee was inaugurated by the Speaker following a resolution of the House at plenary to investigate and review activities in the power sector. He disclosed that this is the findings from the investigation, which he said was carried out via communication with experts and relevant stakeholders. He said that the power sector is critical to the nation's industrialization and development. He revealed that the greatest issues bedeviling the sector after the unbundling of the defunct National Electric Power Authority, NEPA, is the inability to effectively transmit and distribute electricity supply across the country. The majority leader revealed that some of the institutions have not been able to meet the covenant obligations they entered into at the time of privatization and has reduced the capacity to enable reliable and quality electricity supply for both domestic and commercial use. He said the power sector needed more funds, an effective gas supply system to meet its obligations, revealing that gas suppliers were claiming billions of naira owed to them. He also talked about operators complaining that the electricity tariffs were not cost reflective. Dogowa noted that Nigerians appreciated the efforts of the institutions, particularly GENCOs, which now have the capacity to generate over 10,000 megawatts of electricity, saying DISCOs and transmission companies must do more to improve electricity in the country. He said with a hike in electricity tariff without corresponding increase in quantity and quality of electricity supply is the mandate of the Ad Hoc Committee for the Common Man. The chairman said this is what led to the invitation of the federal government to help boost the poor state of power in Nigeria, which is the Siemens intervention deal. And that's all we can take for E&E Weekly Thursday edition. Join us again on Tuesday next week when we bring you top stories from the energy, power, and environment sector. I am Joycelyn Elakeche Ada. Thanks for watching.